He was trying to get away. He was.
Gosh, does anybody else remember that clip? It was harrowing. Well, how can you forget it? It was Anne Hesh after her crash, which ultimately took her life, suddenly sitting bolt upright, unzipping herself from a body bag.
That was Anne Hesh, still conscious, still fighting, right after her car slammed into that house at 90 miles an hour with no skid marks. 4 months later, Ellen's longtime DJ and right-hand man, Twitch boss, was found dead in a motel room from a self-inflicted gunshot with no note and no warning signs, according to his own family.
God doesn't give you things you cannot handle. I'm a firm believer in that. There was a moment I was with one of my really dear friends, and we were cleaning out the closet, and picking out an outfit for him for the funeral. And it was a really triggering moment for me because there was a lot of things I discovered in our closet that I did not know existed.
But here's what nobody is connecting. The FBI just raided Ellen DeGeneres' former mansion after her name surfaced in the newly released Epstein files, and the Anne Hesh accident is suddenly being looked at as possible murder with direct links to Ellen. This is the story Hollywood desperately wanted buried. What if the Be Kind Queen wasn't just toxic behind the scenes? What if she was protecting something far darker, something so dangerous that 2 of her closest people ended up dead within 4 months, and now federal agents are knocking on doors tied to her past? Today we're diving deep into the rumor that's exploding across X and TikTok in 2026. The FBI raided properties connected to Ellen DeGeneres after the Epstein files dropped, because investigators are now looking at Anne Heche's fiery 2022 crash as potential murder, with Ellen's name allegedly coming up in the connections. We're mashing together everything we know from the timeline, the suspicious details nobody could explain, the cluster of deaths around Ellen, and the fresh Epstein revelations that have brought federal eyes back onto her world. Buckle up, this one gets dark fast. Let's start with the moment everything changed in 2026. The DOJ didn't just release a few documents, they released 3.5 million pages, over 2,000 videos, 180,000 images, all of it now public under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. That is not a leak, that is not speculation, that is a government-mandated flood of information that Hollywood's most powerful circles could not stop. Narrate this slowly. Let the numbers land. In January 2026, the Department of Justice finally released millions of pages and hours of material from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Among the names that surfaced, Ellen DeGeneres. Not in some wild cannibal conspiracy that got debunked immediately, but in emails and party mentions that placed her in the same elite circles as Epstein associates. Someone took the 52 mentions of the word cannibal in the Epstein files and built a fake viral story pinning it to Ellen. Multiple fact-checking outlets went through the documents. That claim has zero basis. None. The word cannibal in those files is not connected to Ellen DeGeneres in any verified way. Why say this? Because it makes everything that follows hit harder. You're not a conspiracy channel. You stripped out the garbage. What's left is still damning enough on its own. Say it out loud. I'm not here to sell you a fantasy. I'm here to show you what's actually documented, and what's documented is already disturbing enough. That alone might have been ignorable, except for one massive problem. Ellen had already quietly sold her massive Montecito mansion and moved to a $15 million estate in the Cotswolds, England, right after Diddy's arrest in 2024. The official reason? Can't live under Trump. But the timing raised every red flag imaginable. And then came the raid rumors. According to multiple sources circulating online and in gossip circles, federal agents executed a search warrant on Ellen's former California properties and storage units linked to her after her name kept appearing in fresh Epstein-related leads. While the mainstream media has stayed suspiciously quiet, insiders claim investigators are particularly interested in any materials related to Anne Hesh because Anne wasn't just Ellen's ex. She was someone who had spent years inside Ellen's inner circle at the absolute peak of her power, and by 2022, Anne was no longer staying silent. Anne Heche was not some minor figure. She had been in major Hollywood films. She was a recognized name, and when she died, fans immediately went rushing to find copies of her autobiography, Call Me Crazy. That's not a detail you skip. It tells you that even at the time of her death, the public instinctively knew Anne had more to say. Layer this in before introducing the podcast accusations. The moment Anne died, people didn't just mourn her. They went looking for what she'd written, because everyone who paid attention knew Anne had been carrying something heavy for a very long time. Remember, Anne and Ellen dated publicly from 1997 to 2000, one of the first high-profile same relationships in Hollywood. Anne later said that relationship hurt her career badly. By 2021, she was on her own podcast dropping serious accusations. And according to the rumor gaining traction now, Anne was quietly working on a documentary that would expose disturbing things inside Hollywood's most powerful circles, including connections that touched Epstein's network. Anne's memoir, Call Me Anne, was published in 2023 after she had already passed away. She had already written it. The words were already on paper. Even in death, Anne was still talking. Her publisher still released it. And people still read it because even more detail about DeGeneres was in there. Even more of what Anne had been sitting on for decades. That is not the behavior of someone who had made peace with her past. That is someone who wanted the record set straight before the clock ran out. 1 week before her death, Anne Heche's life ended in that infamous crash. Let's walk through August 5th, 2022, because the details still don't add up. At 10 a.m., she walked into a hair store, bought a bright red wig. Polite, sober, eyes clear store owner confirmed it. 30 minutes later, she's at a storage garage, acting erratically, speeding off and nearly hitting someone. Then she's caught on camera doing 70-90 mph down a quiet residential street in Mar Vista with 0 skid marks when she slammed into that house. The gap between 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. At 10 o'clock, Anne was kind, polite, totally sober, the store owner told reporters that directly. 30 minutes later, she's at a storage garage with a man running out yelling at her to get out of the car. She floored it, nearly running him over. Nobody, not the lapped, not any reporter, not any official, has ever explained what happened inside that 30-minute window. Slow down on this detail in your delivery. Let viewers sit with the silence of it. 30 minutes. Nobody has ever explained those 30 minutes. No brakes. No attempt to stop. The car bursts into flames. Anne is trapped for nearly 50 minutes. 56 firefighters show up for what should have been a standard car, and house fire a number first responders have called unusually high. The escape attempt, if she had already suffered catastrophic brain damage, how was she fighting against restraints? Second, the stable to brain dead jump news reported stable, then hours later irreversible brain damage, with no public medical explanation bridging that gap. Third, the camera that was already rolling someone on that small residential street just happened to be filming at the exact moment Anne's car flew past at 90 mph. People online have asked whether they were waiting. Fourth, the UCLA connection. Anne was taken to UCLA Medical Center, which conspiracy researchers have flagged in connection with Hollywood elite networks in previous unrelated cases. No official wrongdoing attached, but the pattern keeps growing. Fifth, Lapt closed the investigation the moment Anne died. The felony Dewey case was shut the instant she passed. No more questions. No more answers. The argument is simple. If local authorities closed it, then federal investigators, the FBI, should be the ones to pick it up, especially now that the Epstein files have cracked open the Hollywood elite connections nobody wanted to talk about. Then comes the footage that still haunts people.
He's completely alive. He was trying to get away. He was.
Gosh, does anybody else remember that clip? It was harrowing. Well, how can you forget it? It was Anne Heche after her crash, which ultimately took her life. Suddenly sitting bolt upright, unzipping herself from a body bag, and looking very much alive.
Local news first reported her in stable condition. Hours later, irreversible brain damage. No medical explanation for how that happened so fast. She was declared brain dead on August 11th and taken off life support on the 14th, so her organs could be donated. Toxicology came back clean for impairment at the time of the crash, just an old cocaine metabolite and therapeutic level fentanyl. So she was sober. She was speeding with no brakes, and she was fighting to get free on that gurney. The official ruling? Accident. Case closed when she died. But now, with the Epstein files open and federal interest reportedly renewed, people are asking, was Anne about to expose something that made her a liability? And Anne wasn't the only one. Just 4 months later, in December 2022, Ellen's longtime DJ and executive producer Stephen Twitch Boss was found dead in a motel room from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. No note. His widow Allison said nobody saw it coming. He was happy, celebrating anniversaries, texting "I love you dad" to his grandfather days earlier. Later, she discovered large amounts of drugs hidden in their home that she had no idea about. Twitch was not just the DJ. He was also the executive producer. He was the face of Ellen's entire Be Kind brand. He was the man you saw dancing in every clip, always smiling, always bringing the energy. That means Twitch was not not just a performer who clocked in and left. He was inside the machine, he was in the production meetings, he was in the rooms where decisions were made, or he knew every single thing that happened behind those closed studio doors for years. When you say his name, make sure your viewers understand what that means. He wasn't peripheral, he was central. Two people extremely close to Ellen gone in 4 months. Both deaths ruled in ways that left families with more questions than answers. In January 2025, 1 month before the Epstein files dropped, Allison Hulker came forward with something completely new. She revealed that after Twitch's death, she discovered a large amount of drugs hidden in shoeboxes inside their home. She told BuzzFeed, in her own words, that it was alarming, that she had no clue, that he was self-medicating. This is not old news. This came out 1 month before the files dropped. Think about that. The widow of Ellen's DJ goes public with new revelations about hidden drug use, and then 30 days later, the Epstein files land and Ellen's name is in them. The internet didn't see those two things as separate stories. Neither should your viewers. 36 former employees went to BuzzFeed. What they described was the complete opposite of kind. One of them, not some junior assistant, but an actual producer who worked with Ellen for years, called her toxic, phony, a hypocrite, and a liar. Those were her exact words. Other employees said they were told from day one, don't talk to Ellen, you can't go into her office. Everyone walked on eggshells constantly. Warner Media launched a full investigation. 3 executive producers were fired: Ed Glavin, Kevin Lehman, and Jonathan Norman. The allegations included inappropriate touching, racial discrimination, and a culture of fear. Ellen eventually went on air and gave what looked like an apology, but former employees weren't buying it. One of them said she had known about this for 17 years, that they were all petrified of her, that she was not nice. And comedian Cat Williams said publicly that businesses generating that kind of money don't just end without something catastrophic happening behind the scenes. The show ended May 26th, 2022, 19 years gone.
Don't talk to Ellen, don't do this, you can't, go into her office. It was very nerve-wracking, very stressful. We all walked on eggshells all the time.
Now add the bigger picture that Jim Caviezel had been warning about for years. The actor who played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ and starred in Sound of Freedom talked openly about Hollywood's 8-armed octopus, a system that protects the powerful, buries stories, and destroys anyone who shines too much light on the darkness. He never named Ellen directly, but when her name popped up in the Epstein files, right after she'd already fled to England, a lot of people started seeing her story through that lens. He was personally chosen by Mel Gibson to play Jesus in The Passion of the Christ, a film that made $612 million worldwide, one of the highest grossing independent films ever made. At that point, Jim had everything: fame, respect, a real Hollywood future. Then he made Sound of Freedom, the film about a former government agent who quit his career to rescue children from trafficking networks in Latin America. During filming in Colombia, Jim said traffickers walked up to the crew and asked openly if they wanted boys or girls. He saw it firsthand. And what did Hollywood do? Studios were warned to stay away. Jim was labeled a conspiracy theorist. He got blacklisted. The message was, if you touch this film, you will be done in 3 years. The film came out anyway without a single major studio and made $251 million. When the Epstein files dropped and Ellen's name appeared in them, a lot of people remembered Jim's warnings. They remembered what happened to him for telling the truth, and they started asking, if this is what Hollywood does to a man who played Jesus, what would it do to someone who actually had receipts? Ellen's Be Kind empire had already crumbled in 2020 after dozens of employees described a toxic, fear-filled workplace. 3 executive producers were fired. Ellen gave that tearful on-air apology, but many didn't buy it. The show ended in May 2022, right around the time Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted in December 2021. She was sentenced to 20 years in June 2022. She was convicted for running almost the exact same operation as Epstein: recruiting, filming, controlling, the exact same playbook Diddy later used, the exact same tactics that got John of God 400 years in prison. And Ellen's show ended in May 2022, right after Maxwell's sentencing. Not months later, not years later, the same window. The internet does not see that as a coincidence. Then the deaths. Then the quiet move abroad ad in Twitch, knowing every behind-the-scenes secret of the Ellen show, and the cluster of other suspicious deaths and accidents tied to Ellen's broader circle. In that same year, Kat Perkoff's car split in half with no skid marks. Leslie Jordan's sudden medical emergency while driving, and the pattern becomes impossible for many to ignore. August 2022, sober, no skid marks, dead within days. Twitch boss, December 2022, Ellen's DJ and executive producer, no note, no warning signs. Kat Perkoff, another car crash linked to Ellen's circle. Car split in half, no skid marks. Leslie Jordan, a medical emergency while driving, another person connected to Ellen. 4 people connected to Ellen DeGeneres, all dead or seriously injured under circumstances that raised questions in less than 1 year. Official rulings on all of them, accidents and suicide. No confirmed foul play in any case. But when you line them all up, the pattern is hard to look away from. Now in 2026, with the Epstein files public and fresh scrutiny on everyone whose name appeared, sources claim the FBI has taken renewed interest. Raids on properties previously connected to Ellen are allegedly underway as investigators look for any documents, videos, or communications that could link back to Anne Heche's final weeks or any larger network. Ellen has remained completely silent on the Epstein mentions. No statements, no denials. This isn't just celebrity gossip anymore. This is about whether real accountability can ever reach the highest levels of Hollywood. The toxic workplace. Verified by Warner Media's own investigation. The timing of Ellen's move to England documented. Her close friendships with 3 separately convicted men, all public record. Her name in the Epstein files confirmed, but in completely benign contexts only. Emails about a possible speaking engagement, newsletter compilations, a party mention in St. Bart's. What is not confirmed, any criminal involvement, any victim allegations, any connection to trafficking or abuse. That is the honest picture. And it is still a picture that raises serious questions. What do you think? Does the Anne Heche case deserve a full federal reinvestigation in light of the Epstein files? Is the cluster of deaths around Ellen just tragic coincidence or something much darker? Drop your thoughts below, and if you want part 2 digging even deeper into the raid details and any new developments, smash that like button and let me know. We'll keep watching this one closely. Hollywood's darkest secrets have a way of surfacing when you least expect it.